Hi, this is Natalie Hoffman of FlyingFreeNow.com, and you're listening to the Flying Free Podcast, a support resource for women of faith looking for hope and healing from hidden emotional and spiritual abuse. Welcome to episode 130 of the Flying Free Podcast. Today I have with me, she's actually a repeat guest. And the other cool thing about our guest today is that she plays an integral role in making this podcast happen, in part of the podcast production. It's the great and wonderful Sarah Richmond. Hello, Sarah.
You are hilarious.
Welcome to the podcast.
Well, tell me about your podcast.
Because you don't know anything about it, right?
That's really great.
Sarah does she does the dirty work of the podcast, I think. She takes the transcript, and then she writes up show notes for it. And so whatever you're reading in the show notes, that's all Sarah. She does all of that. And then she also makes sure that it gets posted to social media. And what else do you do?
I make sure that it goes live and in the podcast host.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And also you send out the email.
I do.
Yeah, she sends out the email. So, by the way, if you're listening and you're like, what email? You can get an email every Wednesday morning from us that says, here's the podcast. And it gives you a direct link to the podcast and the show notes and the whole 9 yards. Just a little email. It's not spammy at all. It's got a nice picture in it and little links. And anyway, you can get that. It's from Sarah. It's actually from me, but Sarah's actually the ghostwriter behind it. And you can get that every Wednesday morning. All you have to do is go to my website, flyingfreenow.com, which, by the way, well, as of this podcast, it just went live. We have a new website. Have you noticed that, Sarah? I bet. Have you noticed?
It looks great.
Yeah, it's a new. So my friend Becky, she completely redesigned the whole entire thing. And so if you are, of course, you guys will be listening to this a few months from now. So it's going to be old news.
It's so new.
I hate that about the podcast is that I record so far in advance because I'm so scared of getting behind that everything is already like ancient news by the time it reaches the actual podcast. So anyway, that's just the way it goes. So hopefully you guys have all seen that. But if you want to get the emails, you go over to my website and get on my mailing list. There's different places you can get on there. I don't even know where they all are anymore, but I think she tried to make them obvious. Just sign up anywhere where it says name and email. If you give us your name and email, you'll probably get on that list, and then we'll send you an email on Wednesday mornings with the podcast. Otherwise, you can just subscribe to it in iTunes or Spotify or Stitcher or wherever you get, whatever your favorite podcast app is. It's another way to do it.
Yeah.
So Sarah, so Sarah and I were talking about like what we would talk about, and we thought it would be not fun, but it's not really, none of these topics are ever very much fun. It's such a serious podcast sometimes.
So I'll just alternate. I'll tell jokes every 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's kind of why I brought Sarah on. She provides some comic relief, right? She provides that for me anyway.
I'm not promising anything.
I love Sarah. She makes me laugh. So anyway, hopefully she'll make you guys laugh. But this topic, though, is kind of serious. It's what happens. What can you expect when you decide, if you decide to leave your abusive relationship? And people ask this all the time, or what I see a lot in the forum, the private forum that we have for Flying Free and Flying Higher, is I see people saying they leave, or they file for divorce, or maybe they just separate, and then they come into the forum and they're like, it's so bizarre. My partner is doing this, XYZ. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, it's not bizarre at all. It's like what they all do. Yes. That person is doing it. And so that's kind of what this podcast is going to be about. It's like, what do they do that's so bizarre, but they all do it? So it's really not that bizarre. It's actually normal for abusers to do these things.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Okay. Okay. So, well, what things do you wish that you knew beforehand, Sarah?
So I wanted to talk about this. I mean, what you said is true. Almost every woman is going to bring up the same questions or the same concerns or have really similar experiences. And in the past, my church has referred people to me. I've actually had people hear me on your podcast before, and maybe in my butterfly story, and they contacted me through my website. And sometimes it was related to business and sometimes it wasn't. It was just, hey, thanks for your story. And I end up repeating some things often. And usually it relates to what they're going through when they're leaving. And it's a really chaotic, scary time, but there's some similar themes. And I just sort of wanted to address those that I hope will help women who they're about to, or they're in the middle of it, or maybe they're past it, but this will help just bring them to a greater place of peace. I would say the first thing to know is that, and you sort of hit on it, they're going to behave in predictable ways, and those ways are horrible. Leaving all the behavior that you saw before you left, you're going to see ratcheted up times like 5,000. And that sounds horrible, but if you expect that or just assume that that's what he's going to do, then I think you'll be better equipped to just say, okay, this is normal. And it's not your fault. This is his bid to either scare you or guilt you or just somehow sway you into doing his bidding. And usually that's just to get you back into the home and into the same dynamic you were in before. Yeah. And I remember being harassed and stalked myself, and it was terrifying. And I had a friend who was very wise, and she just said to me, Sarah, this is not an emergency. Now, was I in danger? Yes. But she meant, his constant hounding me by text, by email, by voicemail. And I decided, you're not an emergency. I don't have to respond to everything that you do. And he kept telling me, this is your fault. And it wasn't. So nothing that he's doing is your fault. That is what I wish I knew beforehand. He's going to act really crazy, and it's not your fault. And along with that, I think because of what we've been through, and usually it's years or even decades of this same cycle, we think that if we give in to whatever demands they have, and usually it revolves around the kids or coming back or whatever it may be, we think if we give in, it'll help. Or if we're just really kind, they'll calm down. And all that does is feed the flames. It does not help at all. It prolongs it. And so if you can, in those moments, remind yourself that the whole point of you leaving was to stop this in its tracks. So giving in, and even to go into sort of a third point, mimicking anything in your marriage, any of the dynamics you had, they're not going to help. They're not going to serve you or your kids. It's just going to keep you on what I call this psychotic merry-go-round. Yeah. So whatever you need to do to stop that, to keep yourself safe, to disengage.
Can I just say? Yeah, I just want to jump in here and say, it won't actually stop them from doing what they're doing. They'll keep doing it, but you can't really control that. But you can when you stop doing what you usually do.
Yes.
In that situation, that's when the dynamic changes. But usually, when you stop doing what you usually do, that kind of throws them off balance, and they start. That's one of the reasons why they ratchet up. But I wanted to say too, though, that I know your guy, he got really, really wacko, and some of them do. They're like totally insane. But some of them, I think a lot of them actually get all kind of weepy and I'm so sorry. And all of a sudden they start doing the love bombing thing. I think I see that happen more often, but I'm going to say this with a caveat. That will happen first. It's kind of like a lot of guys will do that. That's their first, you called it a bid to burn. Yeah, that's their first bid. And if that doesn't work, then that's when they go ballistic. And some of them, though, are like yours, and they'll be more overtly like that. But some of them will be more like mine, who did the smear campaign behind my back. It was like didn't say anything to my face, but behind my back, he was going around and spreading all kinds of fascinating stories about me. I mean, if only I was that fascinating, if only I was that dramatic of a person.
Yeah.
But and then people believed, a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people believed him. And then that's really painful for the woman too, because it's like, my gosh, I spent my whole life like building a reputation, not a fake reputation, but like just, this is just who I am. And I've always had a good reputation with people. And, for being a truth teller, for being a woman of integrity, for being a hard worker, for being on time, for being, caring, for, all of these things. And then all of a sudden, in just 1 year, your entire reputation can be leveled to the ground because of somebody's lies. It's unbelievable.
I mean, it can take one conversation, and that is, I will say this though, mine ran the gamut. It wasn't just really scary, what I would call psychotic behavior. It was the smear campaign. It was, so what I noticed, and what you'll start to notice, and this is a really great way to empower yourself in the beginning, over time, it'll just become background noise, is you'll start to identify the pattern, like, and where you are in the cycle of abuse. So usually mine will start with a bit of kindness when I set a boundary. And then when that doesn't really work, because maybe I push in like, okay, now change your behavior, this needs to stop. Then he'll push in with, no, this is your fault. And he'll move into bullying and blame shifting and projecting. Yeah. And then once bullying doesn't do much of anything, like, and he'll try multiple avenues. Like maybe he'll say something nasty about, the past, about the way I parent, about the fact that I did this all for the money. Like he'll hit whatever he can, and usually really long texts, which I love. And then once I'm not very interesting and I'm like, no, I have no response or whatever, then he'll give up. And a little while later, not that day, he'll go back into sort of like fawning, trying to appease me. And eventually he just lets off, and there's quiet for a while. So if you can recognize where you are in that part of the cycle, then knowing, okay, you're about to flip out and I can just ignore it is, I think it's empowering. It doesn't make it benign, but it makes it much less scary, and it can be more like water off a duck's back versus, oh my gosh, everything he says is true and I have to respond to everything. And, your perspective will make a huge difference in how traumatic and horrible this stuff is to you.
Yes.
So
I will say that if you can eliminate your dramatic response or your reaction to them, that will change the entire game.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm 4 years out, and I can still tell that I would say that this person gets his jollies by trying to incite things, like trying to instigate things with me. And I just, it could just be that I actually respond to something that I don't have to respond to, or I give him a bit of information related to my life that he doesn't absolutely have to know. And from there, he'll try to, go to 1,000, get nowhere, and then come back down. But I just, the fact that I know that he gets his jollies from that is enough. It's hard. It's really hard to control myself sometimes when I want to just rip the ridiculous BS that I'm dealing with apart. But staying quiet and not responding is, I would say, key to, you can't stop their behavior, but over time they'll learn, oh, this just doesn't work. And they'll try every now and then again, but it just doesn't work.
Right.
And so they're not going to waste as much energy.
And your deadness is powerful.
Yes. And then that doesn't mean that you have to be dead in general though. And there are parts of you that, you're going to want to reawaken, and you're going to be able to give your full self to other people, but not to them. Right.
Yes. Very, very, I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah. And then along with that, even though you're doing what you can, obviously by leaving, and responding differently, you're not going to come out of this, and you haven't come out of this unscathed, and your kids aren't either. So don't have that as your goal. This idea that if I do X, Y, and Z, then everything will work out. That ship sailed when you were born.
Yeah, exactly. When you were given the gift of life, it came with a lot of baggage.
Yeah. And with that, then the goal isn't that you figure things out perfectly, that you perfectly protect your children, that you heal perfectly or in a certain time. one of the beautiful things about this process is that you were finally throwing off the shackles, not just of a marriage that was killing you, but a lot of ideologies and false beliefs that were destroying your spirit as well. And one of those, I think, is just that linear thinking, and it's spiritualized in the Christian world that if you do X, Y, and Z, then you'll get this result. And that's not true. There's some truth to it, but it's not true. And so I would just say that try to remember in the chaos of this huge, huge transition that the goal isn't to find some kind of immediate normal, that you're going to have periods of constant readjustment. Frankly, for the first few years, it seemed like, and it's still sort of like this in a sense, it seemed like every time I got my feet underneath me, they got knocked out again. And I don't mean that to sound as if things were horrible and there was no forward movement and no progress. That's not true at all. I just mean that there wasn't a real way for me to find some kind of normal or build, what would you call those things that you do constantly? What's the word? I can't remember. Habits. And just, I had to be
routines.
Routines. I had to be like really, really flexible and really gracious. Otherwise I felt miserable and like a huge failure. So try to be really, really flexible and gracious with yourself. Try to look at yourself as if you are a cute little fuzzy cat that you just want to love. Okay.
This is what I love about you. Okay. So that was very encouraging. That was a really encouraging piece of advice. Is there anything else that you needed to hear back then when you were going through your thing that you wish that you would have known or that you needed to hear?
I think just generally, and I sort of touched on it, that just because you're doing the right thing doesn't mean it's not going to be easy. And the fact that it's really hard is not because you're doing the wrong thing or because you're doing it wrong. It's hard because it's hard. That's it.
That's profound. Let's just stop and think about that for a minute. It's hard because it's hard.
Yeah.
It is.
You're not weak and you're not failing. It's just hard.
And it's okay. It's not, I think a lot of it, it's human nature to want to escape icky feelings, right? We want to, and we will try to solve for those icky feelings in some way, usually like in some way that's a quick fix. And those quick fixes are not very effective long-term. And then the other problem is that we don't ever learn that we can actually sit with hard things. We can actually sit with icky feelings. They're not going to kill us. I have experienced a lot of really hellish feelings over the past few years. And I have learned to, like, when they come and wash over me, to actually just allow them to be with me, to say, okay, I guess this is the time when I'm going to feel like I just want to die,
Yeah. What you're saying is actually, and I know this stuff isn't new to you, but isn't it a constant process where you're just going deeper and deeper into things and you're trusting yourself more and you're trusting the process more?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you can learn that icky feelings won't kill you, you do actually become much stronger. It's weird because you think that they're going to, your brain, your amygdala is awakened and it's like screaming at you that you're going to die, and your prefrontal cortex is shutting down. And your prefrontal cortex, that's like your reasoning brain, your rational brain, your creative, that's like the part of your brain that is able to come online and just make your life amazing. But it shuts down when your little amygdala is, screaming that you're going to die.
Yeah. And I think what you're pointing out is that our biology is made to protect us. And so when we realize that we've been avoidant or we're self-sabotaging or we're numbing out in the middle of this process, like, I don't know about you, but I had times where I would realize, that I'd ate like crap for an entire week, or I had just been standing in my kitchen for most of the day, like almost like walking in circles like a lame duck, because I was so I was in overload so much because of the constant chaos. And we don't have to hold ourselves in contempt because of that. Our bodies are just getting us through. And over time, if we sit with those feelings that come up when they come up and trust the process, the path isn't into deeper, more horrible things. It's actually taking us into peace and healing the deepest wounds that we have.
That's right. I keep thinking, as we're talking, of a podcast episode that I heard from Brene Brown's, what's her podcast called? Do you remember?
I don't remember, which stinks. I should know.
Just look up Brene Brown podcast. And she did one with these two sisters. Oh my word, I have a terrible memory.
The people
with those people. She was like talking to some people on this podcast. Oh. Anyway, it was these two sisters and they wrote a book about stress. It's called Burnout. I think the book is called Burnout.
Okay.
And it's by two sisters. They're twins. And the podcast episode was about stress. You know what? I'm going to put the link in the show notes. So this is another reason why you got to go to the show notes. There's extra stuff in the show notes that Sarah puts it. Sarah is going to put the link in the show notes. The link to this podcast episode by Brene Brown.
Don't you worry, listeners. I got you.
I was going to say, you're welcome, Brene, for sending my millions of people to your famous podcast. Anyway, it's a great podcast because I actually went out and bought the book and the book is great too. Because it was the first time I'd ever really realized that stress is normal and it's okay. We all are scared of stress and we all think, oh my gosh, I'm stressed. Ah! But actually stress is normal. You should be experiencing stress throughout the day. That's good. It's what you want to do is learn how to complete the stress cycle. Mm-hmm. And that's what that whole podcast and the book Burnout is about, is learning how to complete the podcast, learning how to complete the stress cycle. And one of the best ways to do that is physical activity. So what I have done since I heard that podcast, it was several months ago now, and I learned that I have taken walks. So when I've had several extraordinarily extreme stressful times since then, scary times. And I have what I do is I put on my headphones and I'm sorry, but my favorite complete the stress cycle song is by Sia. And it's called, oh gosh, why can't I think of it?
I love her.
It's called Never Give Up.
Okay. I got to listen to it.
I think that's what it's called. Never Give Up. And yeah, is that what it's called? I'm going to put the link to that in the podcast too, whatever it's called. Anyway, it is like I walk and I listen to that and it fires me up and it reminds me I will not give up. I want to, but I will not. Let's see. Let me think of the lyrics. You look at me down and I keep going hands at the ground, but I never give up. No, I never give up. No, no. Oh,
you were so cute.
How was that?
I mean, I was over here just getting down.
Were you?
No, but I loved it.
Oh gosh, I wish I could. All I can remember is the never give up part, but that, that's the best part, right? Yeah. Never give up. So you guys have to go listen to that song. If you've never listened to rock and roll, it's okay. It won't kill you. Go listen to that song, Sia, Never Give Up. Yeah. And it'll fire you up. And that song helps me. It really does help me to complete the stress cycle. And I walk fast and I kind of have a determined look on my face. And I have listened to that even when I've felt like a tremendous grief over the loss of something that I, have loved. And I have needed that message of just, I'm not going to give up, even no matter what. Anything can get stripped away from me, and I'm going to live my life, and nothing is going to stop me from living my life. I'm going to show up because that's who I am. So, and that's who I've noticed survivors do tend to be. They tend to be people who are, every time they get knocked down, they get back up again. That's the other thing I want to say. If you've never seen, it's not Wonder Woman, it's Captain America, right? Captain America? Is that who she is? No, it's Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Captain Marvel. If you've never seen that movie, you have to see that movie and you'll see yourself in that heroine. Yeah. No, not heroin. Heroin is the drug, right?
No, you got it. Heroin. But in this case, it has an E on the end. Oh,
okay. They're both called heroin? I'm going to smoke some heroin I am a heroin?
Heroin? Maybe you should make the E a long E.
Heroin.
That will sound better. We're not talking about drugs, people. This is
don't do drugs. You guys, stay away from the drugs. Unless it's like antidepressants. Lexapro was a lifesaver for me. And also Xanax once in a while.
On that note, you will heal.
Yeah. Yes. With a little help of heroin. No, just kidding.
So we talked about things that, I wish I knew beforehand that relate to sort of external factors, but there are things that I know I needed to hear, and I said them to myself and I've said them to other women. And if we can touch on those real quick, I'd love to.
Yeah, let's do that.
So one, and it's just be kind to your body. I mentioned, treating yourself like a little fuzzy cat. You cannot even comprehend what your body's been through over the last years and decades. And getting out is not going to decrease the stress in the short term. And in some ways, I mean, the beautiful thing is you're not around that person who is bent on destroying you every second of the day. And that is significant. Don't underestimate that. But assume that you need as much sleep and care and tender, loving gentleness as a little baby, and maybe even more. And if there's one person that you should not allow to make you feel guilty about that, it's you. I mean,
yes,
I just got to a point in my recovery where I was so fed up. I'd left behind my ex. I'd left behind some people who rejected me or didn't trust me anymore when I made that choice. And I had come into my own in a lot of ways. And I realized I was still harming myself from the inside out. And I was so fed up with it, and not honoring my body and being gentle and kind with it. I hated how guilty and pathetic and disgusting I felt when I didn't do that, when I recognized physical weakness or limitations. And I'm done with it. And everybody else should be too.
Yeah.
You're human, and that's not going to change. And what you've been through is a lot. And you've been there every single moment with yourself. So if anybody understands what you need, it's you.
Yeah. Yeah. So many women struggle, though, with loving themselves. They really do hate themselves. I think that's like one of the first things that we have to heal.
Yeah. Yeah. And even just not hating that you hate yourself, not holding yourself in contempt because you have those feelings. Just
right.
Like grace upon grace upon grace and compassion, unending compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then, we talked about how people will reject you and how that's one of the biggest pains. And also just one of the most surprising, horrible aspects of this. You don't know anybody your story. You don't have to defend yourself to anyone.
Yeah. And you don't have to answer anybody's questions.
You don't. I mean, I'm not going to say that there haven't been times I've been yelling in my living room at an imaginary person like, and blah, 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 but better keep it in your living room. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You don't have to demean yourself anymore. You did in your marriage, and you probably pursued a person who didn't care about you at all. And you engaged with a fool, and you tried to please other people who didn't know what the heck they were talking about. You do not have to do that anymore.
Yep. Just because someone asks you a question doesn't mean you have to answer it. Just last night, someone asked me a question and I said, I don't think I'm really comfortable talking about that. And you know what they did? They're like, oh, okay, totally fine.
Yeah, sure.
So.
Exactly. And then, going back to the abuse cycle that we talked about, that's just going to come up. It's going to be a lovely theme in your life. You're like, oh, there you are again. Fantastic. You can remind yourself, and I think you should do it every day, that you're not who he says you are. Nothing about his perspective of you is true. And so, for example, let's say someone walks up to you one day and they stare you in the eye and they say, you are a llama. You're a llama. Wouldn't you just laugh and be like, you're insane, and walk away? Well, if you can, and of course, this probably isn't going to feel real or true for a while, try to approach the way he treated you as if he was just telling you were a llama the whole time, because he doesn't even know what he's talking about.
That's right.
He couldn't see your value. He couldn't esteem you or love you. He doesn't know who you are. And what he says about you is not valuable. It's trash, and it's not reflective of anything that's true about you.
He just had thoughts in his head. You were just a circumstance in his life, and he had thoughts in his head about you, and he got to pick his own thoughts. And of all the millions of thoughts that he could have picked, he picked some pretty crappy ones. And then those thoughts about you made him feel certain ways, and then he did certain things, and now the result is that you're leaving him.
Yeah. And I would
always
say
remember that too. The results are his results. Like they're not, it's not your fault. Cause a lot of women are like, oh, I kind of feel bad for him, you know?
Mm-mm.
Well, why? He chose that.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think that there's a time and a place to leave anger aside for the most part. Not to say that you act as if nothing's wrong when, you know, recurring things happen, but anger in the beginning was really helpful to me. And you should have a righteous anger about the complete crap that you've dealt with and that you are dealing with, because you are valuable. And that would be my next thing that you need to hear, that you are worthy of love. You are worthy of safety. You are worthy of honor. You're a good woman. You're worth pursuing. And what you experience is not reflective of your value at all.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
and
right.
I wish I could just drive that home. And I just want to honor anybody who's listening to this who has made the choice to leave, because even if you don't feel it right now, even if on the inside you're hating yourself on a daily basis, you look in the mirror and you see a wasteland of a person, that's not always going to be true. But beyond that, you affirmed your value when you said no more and you left. So connect to that at the very least. And one day I do believe that you're going to connect on a really deep level to just how amazing and worthy of honor you are if you keep being open to healing.
Right.
And that was number 5, that you can trust the process. You're going to heal. There were times, especially when I had like the betrayal and rejection of family members. I said to my older sister at one point, I'm never going to heal. How will I ever heal from this pain? It is so deep.
Yeah.
And I could almost laugh at that at this point, because not to say there aren't times where something might come up and sort of, you know, make me cringe, but there are so many things I've healed of that I just, they seemed like insurmountable obstacles in my heart, things that just, I mean, it was as if there was no way for my heart to be piece packed together. And it's not true. And that's another thing that I'm going deeper into more recently, just how we look at ourselves and we see broken, and really nothing's actually wrong with us. There's a lot that we believe that makes us think that we're broken or busted up, but these are just beliefs. At your core, nothing's been taken from you. At your core, you are whole still.
Yeah.
And you are the things that ache now are not always going to ache. And the things that cause you to flounder now, your deep end, so to speak, are going to become your shallow end over time. Don't give up hope with that. It's true. And that would be one of my last things that I would say is that there are too many other people in this world who've been through hell and who've walked out of it, who've been through what you've been through, and who've reached greater healing and had amazing lives, for you not to believe that it can't happen for you. And on some tough days, I always just thought back to that. No, there are so many people who started from nothing or had to start again from nothing. There's people who have had everything taken from them, and somehow they did it, and I can too. And that's true for you. There's nothing profoundly different about the people that we're amazed by and you. It's just a matter of, are you willing to fight for yourself?
Right.
And if you are, then you are going to thrive. You are going to have an amazing life. And you can assume that all the beliefs you've had that have held you captive in your marriage, and even now that are affecting you on a daily basis, that they're not true. Entertain the thought that you don't actually know how amazing you are, how great your future can be, what your responsibility is in life for real, like the things that you actually should care about, what your identity is really based on, just everything that you think you believe. I'm not saying toss it all out the window, but for me, being open to negotiating those things has made a huge difference, because when I got out of my marriage, I ended up, like I said, being the only person left abusing myself on a consistent basis. And the only way to stop that was to challenge the beliefs that I had, gently and kindly, but realizing that he wasn't the only one who had done me harm. And the greatest freedom and joy that I found is in the transformation that I've experienced since then. And that is not even really a reflection of just healing from my marriage. It's a reflection of just a constant evolution with myself and discovery. So
Yeah, I need to put in a plug here for the programs too, because those of you who are listening, some of you are in Flying Free and some of you aren't. But so far in the last 5 years, we've had over 2,000 women go through the programs. And that number, that might sound like a lot, but it really only represents like a snowflake at the top of an iceberg of women, of Christian women out there that need help. Okay. So never think that you're alone. I used to think I was alone. I literally thought I was the only one going through what I was going through. Mm. I had absolutely no idea that it was a thing, that it was like, not just a thing, but it was really, really, it's an epidemic. Okay. In the Christian world. So, anyway, if you don't know anything about Flying Free, you can learn more if you just go to joinflyingfree.com. All of the information is there. I hear every single day, I hear somebody, I either get an email or I hear it in the forum or I get a Facebook message or whatever of someone saying this program has changed my life.
Yeah.
And it's a program. It's systematic. It will do, if you're at the beginning, people come into the program and they're like deer with, in the headlights. They're like, where am I? What do I do? I want to change now. Like I want the transfer. I want, Cinderella's godmother to go bibbity bobbity boo and change me like right now. And we have to tell them it's a process. It will happen. It will happen, but you need to go through the program. You need to walk through it and do it in these little bite-sized pieces, and slowly over time, within 1 year, you will think differently. It's like you will become, your whole brain will change. And then that is what changes your life.
Yeah.
So check it out. And then if you're already divorced and you are still feeling like you're sitting in your front yard and your house just got burned down and you're wondering, where am I supposed to go now? Because that's what divorce feels like. It really does feel like your house got leveled and you have no idea, where am I supposed to, like, how do I even begin to rebuild what I had? That is where the program Flying Higher comes in. And those women over there, they're all divorced and they're all rebuilding their lives. And that program will help you do that. So it's a little more intense. There is an application process to get into Flying Higher because I want to keep that group small and focused. So you have to go through that application process. You have to get an invitation. The invitation is only, it's only open for 48 hours. And if you don't accept the invitation, then you have to wait for 6 months to get another invite. So don't fill out the application unless you're ready to go. But you can learn about the whole program and walk through the application process by going to joinflyinghigher.com, and you can learn more there. So
she's saying this in front of me, ladies, and I have been in the program. So obviously she has no fear because this is the real deal.
It is. I just get too much feedback on a regular basis that it changes people's lives. So I want to thank you, Sarah. Did you have any last words before we end?
Funnily enough, I just wanted to thank you. I doubt you get, maybe you get thanks, but I know that.
I get no thanks. No thanks.
Kidding. Gosh, no, I know a fraction of what you've been through, just, on the outside. And then, some things we've talked about when I've worked with you, but I know that you're constantly serving other people, and that, like I just mentioned, you are the real thing. And I love that you offer women a place of safety and you offer them a path to healing and freedom. And I'm really, really grateful for you.
Thanks, Sarah. I really love working with you. I love how you make me laugh. I really like to laugh. So I'm ready to cough out a lung. Have you noticed that? I'm like starting to cough. Anyway, watch, I just die here on the podcast.
No.
Anyway, Sarah she totally makes me laugh. Every time I talk to her, she makes me laugh. And I love that. I just feel like laughter, I think survivors tend to be pretty funny people anyways. I don't know. It's like I think I've said this before too. You you either want to slit your throat or you want to laugh. It's like one or the other, because of the trauma but I think that in order to be resilient and to survive, you have to have some kind of a sense of humor on some level.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't think abusers have a sense of humor.
Yeah. Not a real one.
No, not a real one. You're right. They can make, jokes at the other people's expense.
Or really rote jokes, like things that they always depend on. They always say. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not real though. It's not connected to real. Like, I don't think they can laugh at themselves or, or laugh at their own foibles. And I think that did I say that right? Foibles? What's my problem? I can't even talk today.
It sounded like you said foil, like tin foil.
They can't even laugh at their own foil.
Foibles.
Foibles. Cheapers. Anyway, I gotta stop picking words like that. Like, I need to think of easy words. I'm starting to regress and go back to kindergarten. So anyhow, but like that, even that, like I can laugh at the fact that I can't even, there's someone out there going, oh my word, she can't even say the word foibles.
Gosh.
And I know. I'm like, no, I'm just going to sit here and chillax. And say all the wrong words and be totally okay with it. Because you know what? I am human. I'm a humanoid and I do human things. And we all do. And I love that. Like, let's just be messy humans together and just laugh at each other. It's so much more fun than being judgy and nasty. Yeah. All right. So anyway, thank you, Sarah, for coming on here. And thank you for listening. I'm sorry for those of you who are more serious. I'm so sorry. We're
not sorry. What are you talking about?
I'm not sorry.
We're
totally not sorry. They just won't come back and listen again, right?
All right.
Yeah, everyone's got agency. That's okay. You don't have to listen. There's a lot of serious podcasts out there that are amazing. And so those of you who are more of the serious types, you guys this is not going to be your cup of tea. Actually, usually it is. Usually it is your cup of tea. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. All right. We need to end this podcast now because I'm starting to go insane. No, I'm driving everyone else insane. All right, you guys, thanks for listening. If you liked this podcast for some odd reason, go over to Apple iTunes and give us a rating and a review. And that will help people find us. Yeah. And plus Sarah and I and all the other people that are involved. We've got like my son, Philip, he edits all of the audio, and Jennifer she listens to all of these podcasts really closely because she actually is the one who makes the transcript. So hi, Jennifer. And thank you, Jennifer, for what you do. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. I think that's it. I think it's just the four of us. Right?
Making it happen.
Making it happen. So, and the four of us, we really like reading those reviews. It makes us happy.
Yes.
So do that. And that's it. Until next time, fly free. Bye.